Ladies and gentlemen, next we are excited to kick off our inaugural open mic night. We are honored to have our Mr. LEW WAI FONG joining us tonight. Mr. Liu will be presenting the intriguing topic of Tanjung PIAI'S Mangrove Living Museum. Let's give one round of applause to Mr. LEW WAI FONG as he takes the stage. Please welcome.
Hello, mic test, 1, 2, 3. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Fong, and I will be sharing a story about the mangrove forest at Tanjung PI and how architecture can be utilized as a platform to save the mangrove forest. So, before I start my presentation, I will show you the introduction video first. So we actually have lost over 40% of the mangrove lands over the past 30 years due to human factor and environmental factor. So this depletion has also led to the declination, not just the mangrove species, but also the local livelihood. So the question in my mind is, how can architecture can save the mangrove forest? We are spatial designer, we create space. And a space can become a platform to gather the people for community-based ecological restoration efforts. So ladies and gentlemen, introduce to you my humble project, Tanjung PI Mangrove Living Museums, where all the rehabilitation works of the mangroves is carried out and to raise the public awareness of the public according to the mangrove ecology. So Tanjung PI is located at the southeast tip of the Malaysia and Asian continent. It carries the title of Important Bird Area and Ramsar Sites, which indicates the international importance of Wetland Convention. And the strategic location of Tanjung PI actually connects the Pulau Kukuk Wetlands, Tanjung PI, Sungai Pulau Wetland, and our neighbor, Singapore Wetland Reserve Area for the travel path of the migratory bird species to stay over. So, according to the demographic, 77.6% of the local people are actually working on the mangrove-dependent livelihood. Yet, we are facing the problem of the poor maintenance facility and lack of the visitor to sustain the mangroves. So, and also the nursery needed to restore the ecosystem, and the depletion of Tanjung PI of the mangrove forest and threaten the local livelihood and biodiversity. So before I come up with a solution, we need to understand the relationships in between the mangrove forest and the local community. So they are kind of like having mutualism relationship into each other and support each other. Mangrove are supporting all the natural resources, all the raw materials such as fisheries and timber to the local to uplift their livelihood. And then the local people are using that extra income to rehabilitate back the mangrove forest. So here comes the strategies of one ticket, one tree strategy where public can also contribute back to the rehabilitation of the mangrove forest by letting the expert to do the rehabilitation work. So before we're talking about any architecture, it's very important for us to know the site context. So mangrove forest is very rich in biodiversity. It consists dry land and wetland area. So there is a lot of animal and bird species living across of the different forest layers. So the concept is try to bring the visitor to play, to chill and exercise and learn and eventually appreciate the nature. So it could be reflected in my sectional drawing. So I purposely designed the building into separate massing so that in between the building massing, it can adopt the existing trees. And building is designed with different height to adapt to the existing forest layer so visitor can access to different forest layers to look at different bird species. So this is a typical site section showing the transition of massing from land area to wetland area. The building massing actually becomes smaller and smaller. At the end of the tips of Tanjung PI, there's a birch watchout tower. So the second concept would be organic morphology, which I try to fit my building into the existing tree. So this explains why my building footprint is actually in irregular form. So the entire idea of the ground floor plan is to bring the visitors to curate the journey from dry mangrove amenities to wet mangrove amenities as a whole journey of discoveries. So when visitors first arrive at the museum, this is what they will be looking at. So this is the design of mangrove living museums. The design actually features to camouflage the building into the mangrove settings. So when they first arrive at the center, what they see is actually the mangrove garden itself. So instead of doing a typical kind of exhibition where people looking at the information board, why don't we just do a living exhibition? So during the process of entering my building, they already start the discovery process of the mangroves. So of course, we also provide the indoor exhibition, which feature the animal sculptures, come along with the explanation of on the information board. So this is the ground floor area where the community activity take place, where the educational activities can take place. This is where the seminar and then all the classes take place here. So instead of doing the typical terrace, we try to do some fun here by introducing the trampoline so that the children can have fun over here. So the interior part of it features the timber furniture to complement the warm atmosphere of the entire mangrove-made material. So a lot of vertical lure and horizontal lure is introduced to bring in the natural sunlight and ventilations. So the mangrove dyeing class is actually using the pigments that are extracted from the mangrove barks to do the beautiful batik motifs. And we also have the weaving class using the nipa leaves that grows inside the mangroves. So the scientific research lab for the scientists to do their scientist work. So next would be the water pad that lies across the rivers in between. So this is a bird eye view showing how my land building and wetland building overlooking into each other is built with minimal interventions. And during the high tide level, visitors can have the chance to mingle around this area and collecting seashell as their gifts. So during the nighttime, they can have a boat tour along this river overlooking the fireflies that lights up the entire rivers. So the next station will be 3 supported stations, which features the adventurous activities such as the flying fox, and then the jungle walk. So the structure, the concept of a structure itself is to using the existing tree trunk as supporting elements. So I also introduced the sunken platform so that visitor can overlook what exactly happened inside the mangrove roots. And then the structure column itself is actually punctured in between the mangrove roots with minimal disturbance to the mangroves. So next station will be hanging pots, where visitors can have resting on the hanging or suspended furniture. The entire structure is purposely built in the middle of air to give a visitor kind of hanging experience. So at the tips, we have birch watch out tower, where boat tourism and then birch watching can be happened here. So more of the wetland structure, space in between the branches. So it's kind of like parasitic structure that revolves around tree trunks. A visitor can have a closer looks at the parasitic plants that grow on tops of it. So lastly will be mangrove incubator. This is where the rehabilitation work taken place. And we're not only doing the rehabilitation work, we're also doing the ocean debris cleanup. So a little bit of explanation here why the mangrove nursery is necessary. It's because mangrove seedling is very fragile. It couldn't grip the soil firmly and it will be damaged by the sea waves. So we need a protective layer to protect it until the mangrove seedlings grow and have a strength to grip the soil. So the constructability parts. So all the structure that I mentioned above is actually made of dismantleable material and can be easily transported to the site. So how we build it, of course, we doesn't just step into the wet soil. We build the mangrove trail first, navigate around the mangrove without chopping down all the mangrove trees, and start to build the foundation. Of course, the column is punctured in between the roots with minimal interventions. So build an elevated platform, and that's how we integrated with the nature. So these are the details on wetlands showing how my structure are utilizing the existing trunk to support my structure. Details on land, showing how I elevate the platform so that I give back all the ground floor to the nature. So I will end my presentation with a video presentation. This is how I imagine after 40 years later of post-construction, the nature starts taking over place, the buildings. So eventually, the building will be camouflaged within the mangrove settings, and building and nature become one and well integrated to each other. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. LEW WAI FONG, for that wonderful presentation. We will also like to extend our gratitude to today's sponsor, Let It Create Malaysia's Neighborhood, for their generous support of the event. We are pleased to invite their representative, Ms. Elise Lee, Assistant Regional Product Development Manager, Southeast Asia, to the stage and share about their product. Please welcome to the stage.
Hi, evening everybody. I think that was a wonderful presentation. I was so amazed by it. Even give us a view of 40 years later, how it merged into the nature itself. I'm very, very much impressed. Right? So today I'm going to share with you, with such an amazing and creativity, that comes into the building and how it can merge with nature, there must be products that must be able to support such a creative build itself, right? So today I'm going to share with you a little bit about Let It Create and how we make world-class projects possible. Okay? So Let It Create is a US-based company, with footprints over 100 countries and territories. So meaning to say we have vast experience with various, various conditions. For example, different climates, right? Nowadays, earthquake happening and so on. So we have experience in the materials requirements for each and every one of these conditions, right? So here, locally in Malaysia, we have a local plant here located in Rawang. Right? So this Rawang plant is not just for Malaysia, but we actually manufacture for Southeast Asia region. Right? So meaning to say, there will always be stock, right? Because we are producing it for all the Southeast Asia region itself. So these are some of the projects that we have done globally. So when I say project spotlight, it just means that certain ones that we select to give you the wow feeling, right? So for example, we have the Museum of Future. So these are projects whereby is in Dubai, a building that has absolutely no columns in it. So which I find was very, very amazing, right? So we even have Burj Khalifa until today. It is still the tallest, world tallest building, right? And of course, locally, we also have some projects here as well, okay? So Laticrete actually involved in every single layer, right? And when I say that, right, because if today you're going to ask me, so what is Laticrete? What do you provide? So we involve in every layer, for example, when it comes to screening, waterproofing, adhesive, as well as your tiles, grouting in between. And we make sure that because we are involved in every layer, we know that what can make it compatible with each other, which is very, very important, because sometimes there are products out there that is very good. They do their job very well, but it just isn't compatible with the next layer that comes on top of them, right? And by understanding all of this, it contributes better on your overall successful installation, and we also provide comprehensive warranties for it. So it's a single source system warranty if you use everything Laticrete, right? So means from your screed, adhesive, waterproofing, and as well as your tile grouts, if everything is Laticrete, we can provide you with a single source warranty, whereby we warrant that if there's any failure, we would actually pay back and make good that area. So it's not just our products, it will be also the labor costs as well as the finishing costs, right? And this actually covers 5 years and 10 years, okay? So these are the common site issues you always find on site. I think it's so common. One look, you know, I've seen this before. Every time I go to site, one of these will always appear, right? So my question to you is why? After decades of advancement and experience, we are here. Some of us are even 30 over years in this industry, and yet until today we still see the exact same problem. Why? Right? So one of the reasons is because we are pushing boundaries. We are constantly pushing boundaries. Buildings are getting taller, higher. We want it to be lighter. So it means to say we are now have technology advances. We have so many different materials we are dealing with, materials that you have not even seen 30 years ago, right? And that is the materials you're using today. Meaning to say that things, when you introduce new materials, you introduce new challenges, right? So you can't say that I have 30 years over experience in the industry, therefore I know everything, right? I don't need to know anything more. And that is the common thing that we always meet when we go to site, right? People telling us that I have 20 over years in experience in industry. But you have to understand, materials are constantly evolving, right? They're constantly improving. Technologies are changing, right? So these are just the substrate. What about the finishes? Back in the 1900s, 300 by 300 size tiles is known as large format tiles. Can you imagine? For us who are much younger, 300 is so small. Right? Nowadays, you're talking about large slab tiles. We are talking about 1 meter by 3 meters. We're talking about almost seamless the entire area. Right? What is 300 by 300? So imagine, back then, 1900s, it's not long ago. Right? It's already large format tiles. Back then, many is using ceramic tiles. Now, it's mostly porcelain tiles. So the materials you're dealing with is totally different. Not just the base, but the finishing is also different now. Now you have sintered stone coming in, something that you don't see before, right? So all of this would require different treatment, different installation. So you can't say that I know how to do this 20 years ago, therefore it's the same. It's not the same, right? So if you treat it as the same, that's why the site will always give you the same problem over and over again, right? Even after 30 over years, okay? So understanding tiles and stone installation, just sharing, these are all the layers that's involved when it comes to installing tiles as well as stones, right? And a lot of time, I find that most of us are only focusing on one layer, which is waterproofing. The rest, we say, is not so important, right? But I'm going to share, it is very important because your finishes is going to lie on all of this. Any one of these layers fail, your finishes is going to fail along with it. So it's not just one material that is more important than the other. Every layer is just as important, right? So I'm just going to share case study. So this is case study number 1, swimming pool. So this swimming pool was already completed. Not my product, okay? Just to be clear, it's not my product. It's already finished, right? But the tile started to debond, right? And the slab was hollow. So what happened is they repaired this area, okay? So when they repaired, and the issue arise again, the exact same issue arise. Just at that one area, tile started popping off, that area started becoming hollow again, right? And that's where I happened to be giving a product presentation, and the architect started asking me, what if I have this project that's giving this a bit of issue, all right? Can the waterproofing, is it compatible or not? So that's why we find that the waterproofing used is actually modified PU, bituminous-based waterproofing. So this is a good it's good waterproofing, but it's not compatible with cement-based. Anything bituminous is not very compatible with cement. So meaning to say that if you bind it to it, you are going to have very low strength, very low bonding strength, right? It was found at 0.5 only. So 0.5 is okay if you use it in wet areas such as your toilets. It's not okay if you use it in swimming pools. It is too low, right, at 0.5. So the area actually looks like this. And you can actually pull out the waterproofing, just like that, right? Right, so that is a bit of an incompatibility. It doesn't stick so well. Therefore, we can actually just peel it off so easily. And that's why when they repair again, the same issue arises again. And later on, they found it's because the area also have pump. That's why it's so fast. The water pump starts to work, and it started vibrating and everything, so things start to come out very, very, very quickly. Right? So course of action, of course, they have to hack and remove everything. And now they install using our electric submerged water system. So this is basically the removal of it. And I'm just going to share, tentage is very, very important when we are installing. In Malaysia, a lot of time, we overlook this tentage, right? So why is this tentage so important? It's because a lot of our materials are very sensitive to water. And Malaysia rains most of the time, right? So if you do not have any protection, rainwater is going to come in, you're just going to weaken your installation, right? Because the material is going to be diluted, okay? So protection is very important. And then, of course, these are the step-by-step. Basically, we actually help to redo back the swimming pool, okay? Case study number 2. So just now, I already mentioned, I think you will understand how the importance of understanding what is compatible with each other. If you are not so clear, always refer back to the manufacturer. Is this compatible? If it's not compatible, or if you're unsure, then do a mock-up before the actual full project, right? So this case study number 2 is Masjid Putra, and you know that is one of the, very important building, right? So this one, if you have any failure, is you're going to be very, very famous, I would say. All right? So Masjid Putra, they started leaking. Over the years, we understand it started leaking. So they actually asked us to look into how to supply, to resolve the challenges that they have. So one of the main challenge is the dome, the tiles, the mosaic tiles on the dome is actually stick onto fiber reinforced panel. Right? It is not concrete, but fiber reinforced panels. So meaning to say, if I need to hack all the tiles off, I may actually damage the panels itself. And so that's why they ask for hand hacking. There's no machinery at all. You literally have to manually hack, right? Manually hack, but even then, you're gonna expose the fiber of your panels itself, which is not suitable to bond your tiles on top of it. So I need to resurface it. Right? But resurfacing, normal material need at least 10 mm, meaning to say I need to increase the dead load. So they are saying, can I resurface without adding so much dead load. So yes, we do have products to do that. So that's why it's very important to share with the supplier itself, work together as a partner, to share what is the challenges of each individual project. So that's how we can come together and give a solution to it, right? So we actually have this 370145 mortar. It's a mortar bed that can go as thin as 2 mm, just 2 mm without cracking, right? And you can resurface the entire surface and you start to do your refurbishment work, right? So prior to that, they actually did very extensive mock-up. It's not just I give a presentation, immediately I can supply. We actually did this mock-up, 60 days mock-up, right? And they fill it with water. And then after 60 days, they actually check whether it leaks through, right? So I would say that actually these are the important steps that it should be done for most projects. So if you're unsure of certain things, whether this product could work on certain other products, always try to request for a mock-up, all right? So most supplier will do it for you and you ask for the mock-up. That's for your security too, okay? And most importantly, after sales technical support, right? Because today, manufacturers, we don't just want to sell the product and be done with it. I think it is so much more important that products, although they can speak for themselves, most of us have to also recognize that the manpower, the actual application of it plays a huge role in the success of your installation. So if it's not done correctly, however good your product is, it's not going to work. So the after-sales technical support is so important, right? So this is some of the things that we have done. So there's actually a developer in the market that faces certain challenges, and they requested for one of the most extensive pull-out tests that I've ever seen, right? So we are talking about, normally pull-out tests, we will ask for 14 days or 28 days. This particular developer asked for 6 months long, right? So it is very, very extensive. And it's not just us. This is us. Next to us is my competitor. Next to this is another competitor. Practically everyone in the market was there. So if I want to do a market study, I just have to walk past the whole row. I can see every brand and their performance, right? So, but these are the services that you can provide. And I'm happy to say that after this 6 months long extensive test, we managed to become one of their preferred vendor. Okay? So these are some of the things that I would say highly recommend architects to always check with the suppliers. Do they offer these services? And how often? For Ladicrete, we make sure we offer it, we go to site at least once in 2 weeks. Why? Because workers change. If I only go site for one entire project, only 3 times, your workers will have changed so many times that the new batch wouldn't even know how to use my product. That's why it's so important, the frequency of it, all right? So to make sure that, we check for hollowness, to make sure that, no, this Q-lastic is a must, right? To make sure that it's easily met, right? And of course, this is Masjid Putra. Right, and that's all for my presentation for today. So if there's any questions, you can always ask us later on when we are outside. All right, so thank you. I'll pass it back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elise Lee, for that informative presentation. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for the evening, architect Siddarth Mani. He will be presenting on architecture and environment. After graduating from CEPT Ahmed Abab at the Glasgow School of Art, Scotland, architect Siddarth has been an integral part of KSM since 2009. His experience with Lewis and Hickey architects in Edinburgh provided him with valuable expertise in the adaptive reuse and restorations of Grade A listed heritage buildings. He also worked with Alan Murray Architects, Edinburgh, where he dealt with social housing projects and process workflows using BIM. Architect Siddarth has represented KSM as the prestigious World Architecture Festival on 3 occasions, with 2 projects shortlisted and 1 being awarded runner-up in the small office category in 2017 in Berlin. His extensive architectural travels have helped him develop a keen eye for details. His design approach is simple and thematic, bringing significant value of KSM architectural practice. Please welcome to the stage architect Siddarth Mani.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, and thank you so much for the introduction. Lovely to be here in Kuala Lumpur. Incidentally, it was a very nice presentation on the mangrove. I was in Langkawi. I was just discussing. I was in. It's okay. I was in Langkawi. Had the opportunity to see the mangroves myself. Sorry. So I think wonderful presentation. I think there's definitely a great opportunity to do something to see how we can preserve this wonderful piece of nature that Malaysia has, and I think it sets a good example for the rest of the world what we can do. And I think wonderful presentation on laticrete. It's good to know that same problems in Malaysia, same problems in India. We don't listen to what the suppliers say, what the site does, what the architect says. Nothing is coordinated, and we end up with a whole host of problems. So on a lighter note, I mean, it's good to see we share the same problems, but we need to figure out how to solve it. So I'm Siddarth Mani from KSM Architecture. We are a 35-year-old practice based in Chennai, and Chennai is the east coast on the Bay of Bengal. Again, hot, humid, very much like KL, but we don't have the same amount of rain that you have. So a lot of our work essentially is to do with passive indoor comfort. And a lot, I mean, I was amazed by this building, which is completely naturally ventilated, naturally lit. So it is a really nice example to actually present what I'm talking about in this environment. So today's topic is architecture and environment, but when I talk about environment, what I'm really talking about is not only the climatology part of environment, but to do with social sensibilities, is to do with understanding what is the construction skill set availability, is to do with materials that are available locally, and trying to sort of merge all of that to try and create a kind of a local paradigm. Because the way architecture is sort of moving in this day and age, I think there's a sort of sameness of a global kind of an architecture that's sort of forming, and it's very, very hard to sort of identify, are we in this particular place? Is it relevant to that particular place, and so on. So today I have 3 case studies of our own projects that I'd like to talk about, 3 typologies. And the approach to design is very different. It's what we would like to sort of call a more a local approach to where we are. And the sensitivity to the environment is sort of common in all 3 projects. So I'll just quickly move on to the 3 projects that I'd like to talk about. So the first project, it's a learning center. It's called Quest. I'll introduce it with a short video.
Hi, I'm Kabir. And I'm Lasya. We are learners at Quest, the Learning Center. When I come to Quest, I enjoy running up the ramp while Kabir prefers the white steps. The red shutter is always open to let me in, and also our dog Rookie. The gallery is where my friends and I hang out to have a snack. When we are bored, we run up the big steps to pick up a book to read or play a board game. It's cool to go down the slide from the library to the lawn below and play and run up the stairs back to the library. I think I'm the fastest. They have colorful stairs hanging right in the middle. The yellow stairs are my favorite. We also have some rooms where we do some fun activities like art, science, music, or sometimes just take a break. I enjoy playing the piano in the big blue room and watching movies and documentaries in the big red room. For our meals and baking and cooking sessions, we go up to the terrace. It's most fun climbing up this rounded staircase with star-like holes on the sides. We can smell the food while we go up. The roof of our cafeteria is a funny curved grey roof. Actually, a lot of stuff is grey. The walls are like grey bamboo. We have these colorful windows all over Quest, from which I can even see the sea.
So we've always thought of the Quest as sort of like a toy box, and we sort of wanted to represent it in that fashion. So the Quest essentially is in a fairly dense neighborhood, a seaside neighborhood in Chennai, and it is a learning center. This is meant for children who don't want to go to regular school because they're pursuing sport as their primary goal or their primary profession when they grow up. So, but they need to have some contact classes with a faculty or a teacher for them to learn. So this is a learning center for children between the age of about 8 and 14. And that is an age group where it is very, very hard to bound their energy. But we must have, our site is not even 500 square meters in area. So Chennai is pretty hot and humid, like I just told you. But the good feature that we have is that we have a steady breeze from the south that constantly blows throughout the year. So the logic of the design was very simple, was keep the heat out, insulate the building, shade the building from the sun. And considering the prevailing breeze from the south, we said we'll rise the section on the south side by raising it by creating an amphitheater. And the spatial experience sort of extends into a gallery on the northern side. The central atrium, which you see here, sort of extends upwards towards the top and starts creating these spaces that are sort of staggered marginally from level to level, starting to create a kind of a relationship between these spaces and the central atrium space in between. So the roof on top, we also have a roof on top, which is a cafeteria space where we have a jack arch roof structure, which completes the atrium space at the upper level. And the longer walls that we have on the eastern and western sides are highly insulated walls. And the walls that you have on the southern and the northern sides are open in such a way that they allow the light and the breeze to sort of permeate right through the building. So again, in a very compact site, in a very dense environment, having the ability to be able to create a lot of natural light and ventilation is something that is very synonymous with the way we would like to think. So as a result, what you have is a section where we have a lot going on from the lower level, an amphitheater, a library space, and this interesting journey all the way up to the upper floors with your program staggering on both sides. So moving on to how the building is actually put together. The building was built during the lockdown period, during COVID. And site visits were obviously a challenge, so because of contact and labor and so on. So we had to work on a system where a lot of the things that we had to apply on the building, like what we have in terms of facade materials, in terms of aluminum or concrete, all of that had to be precast and had to be manufactured off-site so that we could bring it onto the site and install it. Just to also add to that, precasting and doing off-site work is not very common in India. It's still sort of developing in terms of nature, and a lot of these things were made customized, so it needed a lot of measurements to be taken, to be manufactured off-site and brought into this site location. So the eastern and western walls are sort of composite. So this is just to give you a cross-section of what the walls are like. So the walls that you see here are an insulated wall. So you can see there's an inner wall and an outer wall with an insulation material in between. I think the material used over here was expanded polystyrene. And on the outer face, what you see as the bamboo shuttered glass fiber reinforced concrete was actual panels that were made off-site using bamboo as the shuttering material. So we have not used a mold that looks like bamboo. It was actual bamboo pieces that we used to create that form, and the panels were made off-site, and then they were brought into site and they were anchored onto the building. So the outer skin forms a ventilated rain screen, and then you have the inner masonry wall, an insulation material, and then you have the inner wall on the inside, which forms the inner surface of the interior. So what the bamboo does, why bamboo, why vertically? So self-shading is a brilliant principle that we have seen over the years. It's been there from historically in old Indian architecture, in Mughal architecture. I'd say all over Southeast Asia, you'd find a lot of self-shading being quite popular. So by creating scallops, you're naturally able to create these kind of shadow lines. And some portion of your building is always in shade, therefore there's always some amount of the building that's protected from the harsh sun, therefore your build up in terms of your heat gain is always being cut off, because exposing the full surface to the amount of heat is only going to increase the amount of heat gain that you have, and therefore the penetration of the heat inside your space becomes that much faster. So wherever we had apertures on the east and on the west, we've obviously gone for very small openings, and even those openings, the boxes, the red colored jam that you have was pre-manufactured, pre-cast on site, placed in location, and then the windows were placed within them. So the overall thickness that we have is 400 millimeters from the outer skin all the way to the inner box. So when the bamboo turns around the corner, so the bamboo shuttered GFRC is on the east and on the west, and when the bamboo turns around the corner, it meets this kind of an aluminum aerofoil structure, which is where we want to let that south breeze go through the building. So this is where the geometric harmony of vertical lines, of scallops, of light and shadow, there's sort of a symmetry or a harmony between what you see in the bamboo and as it transitions into the aluminum aerofoil, which opens out, shades the glass. So you slide all your windows open, but you still get this wonderful breeze blowing right through the space, through that atrium, all the way up to the uppermost floor. So we have, the original idea was to sort of make them operable, but then obviously cost came into play, and we couldn't afford to do operable lures. So we have fixed the lures in an orientation which is probably the most ideal between the amount of light, the better views, as well as keeping the western sun out. So Quest is sort of grown sort of into a social anchor, because it's a residential neighborhood. A lot of children living in and around this area use this as a place where they come for summer camps and so on. And the vertical lines sort of exit the building and travel all the way down the floor. And the architectural language of vertical lines, while being functional, sort of flow all through these spaces and materials that you have at the lower levels as well. So this you can see in this concrete door that we have, which is sort of integrated into the overall architectural language. So we've tried to maintain that architectural language of vertical lines flowing through the building, going across the floor, and maintaining that kind of a continuity. Once you start to move inside, the enclosure sort of has the sense of openness. As much as you see it looking sort of like a block on the outside, the inside is completely different. It has a complete sense of openness. So it blurs the boundaries between what is outside and what is inside. So there are openings at the lower level where you're allowed to sort of move in freely from outside all the way to the inside. So the lower level we have a performance area, which is an amphitheatrical space. So as you can see on your right side, You have an opening directly to sort of step out into the yard area. You have steps that can take you up to the upper level. And when you arrive at the upper level, you arrive at a library space where you can sort of sit on top and look down into all those open spaces. All these areas, there is no provision for air conditioning also. It's completely naturally ventilated at all points in time. We just have to choose the time of the day when it's most appropriate to have an event of that nature in this location. As you can see in the roof slabs, we've used timber shuttering. So it's very popular for us because we're a port city. We get a lot of timber from packaging wood, which comes from packages that come in from the shipping. So a lot of this timber that you see over here is actually packaging wood that's been used as the shuttering material for the roof slab. And the same timber has been taken off and has been cleaned and planed and forms the paneling, the desk, and all of this timber that you see over here on all the shelves, etc., has all been recycled as what was shuttering material, was not thrown away, was reused as shelves for all the interior works. All these shelves that you see. So again, the interiors are very Spartan. They're designed to be multi-use and as open as possible. So the staircases sort of form like a vertical street in the central atrium space that we have. So the atrium continues like a journey. You walk through this like a street, and then as you move up to the upper levels, you start seeing rooms on either side. So you have maybe a music room on one side, and as you reach the uppermost floor, we have a kind of a bridge, and the bridge takes you across from this end out into a beautiful spiral staircase which exits the building, and from this exit you sort of find your way up to the uppermost floor, which takes you to this rooftop cafeteria. And we also have a clay making space over here. So you arrive through this door and you pop out into this space, and from here you can have your meal, you can spend time in a terrace over here. So this jack arch is a fairly popular construction system, probably about 50-60 years ago, but of late we are finding a lot of value in using the jack arch system, especially for top floors, because one, it is mortar free. There is no mortar between each of these individual concrete battens that you see. It's purely standing by friction. So this is a system that we trialed out. We had already done this in a project before, and we trialed out for this particular project. And there's a lightweight infill above the rise of the arch, and then we have the waterproofing and the topping layer. I hope it's watertight, and so far no complaints. So that's what we have done. So that's the overall building from bottom to top. So I just have a short video also to just make all these images come together. So that was Quest. So we'll move on to project number 2. So project number 2 is an industrial project. So I thought we talk about a totally different typology. And metallic bellows is an interesting project because it sort of happened parallelly when Quest was going on. So you'd probably draw some parallels between when you see both the projects. But the journey for this project started off sort of as 4 parallel stories. So I'll just walk you through the stories first, and then we can talk about how the design evolved. So, story 1. So in our studio, we watch documentaries once a week. So we were watching this documentary on the late B.V. Doshi, the very eminent architect from India. And he's walking around in this masjid in Ahmedabad called Sarkej Roja. So as he's walking through the spaces, he's describing the beauty of the space through the quality of light, shadow, transparency, gradation of spaces. And in one part of the documentary, he really talks about, you should check it out if you get a chance to see this documentary. He talks about handcrafted buildings having a sense of imperfection. That, we're so obsessed as architects with perfection that we are not, we are so intolerant to the fact that imperfection is how life is, that life isn't perfect. So is there an opportunity to design a building which is a mono-material building? So this building is like so many buildings you would have probably seen. The floor is stone, walls are stone, the columns are stone, the slabs are stone, everything is stone, even the perforated jali walls, all of that was stone. So it sort of put a thought in our mind saying we have all the material choices like your wonderful library you have on the upper floor, and we're spoilt for choice in terms of what all we could use in terms of material. But is there an opportunity to look at a building from a mono-material perspective? So that was story number 1. Then you move on to story number 2. So we went to the client's existing facility. It's a very small factory production unit in a congested part of the city. These are these pictures. But what struck us when we entered were these. They had an amazing collection of succulents, cacti, plants all over the factory, which is normally not done. You don't enter a factory and find more plants than workers, more more pots than you have equipment. So we were like, these guys are serious planters, they're gardeners, they obviously love their plants. So before we thought about anything about the building, we said, we got to find a place for these pots and plants, because I think that seems to be the focus. That sort of struck us as story number 2. Then story number 3, we are heading to the site, and on the way we are passing through, there are brick kilns on either side, and it is a clay belt. So the location is slightly west of Chennai, and a lot of our soil is quite clayey. And when we saw this, we said, there seems to be a lot of local clay brick available. So is there an opportunity for us to use brick as that mono material of our choice? So is that an opportunity? And then finally would be our story number 4. We said CO2 emissions are rising. Everybody knows about it. Everyone's talking about it. Construction industry is the number 1 bad guy. Cement manufacturing is one of the key contributors. So that's always becoming an issue. So could we also, by taking this decision of potentially using a material that is mono-material, could we reduce the amount of cement content? Could we reduce the amount of concrete that we are using? Could we make the building a little bit more sensitive to the planet? So we'll move on to the site. So the site is around 16,000 square meters in area, and it's in the outskirts of Chennai city, like I mentioned. And today what we're talking about is essentially the part that's been marked. So there's obviously the production unit, which is this part, which has also got some brilliant trees and courtyards and so on, because these are all courtyards that go through. It's a 2-story factory. Unfortunately, I can't show you pictures from inside because they have some licensing requirements that we can't show you pictures from inside. So we're talking about this building today, the one that's there on the outside. That's the administrative office. So what's our starting point? So our starting point really was what I had spoken to you about. So I said, we really need to start this story with these pots and plants and beautiful cacti that we have. So the initial thought in terms of a concept was, let us start building gardens. Let's identify where they're going to be and spread it on the ground. And after we do that, we start creating pathways that connect these these gardens from one space to another. Then eventually, what we would do is define these walkways with covered verandas that would sort of straddle the notion of being indoor and outdoor. So verandas can be designed in such a way, like I was in Chinatown today, most beautiful place I'd seen this morning, where you have beautiful covered verandas and you have spaces outside. Here our sensation was we really didn't want people to feel that there was a transition between what was indoor and what was outdoor. So it's sort of like a blur between what would have been indoor and what would be outdoor. So how could we create that? Then yes, we had to fit a program somewhere, so we had to find spaces for rooms and office space and meeting rooms and all of those things. So we said we'll formalize all of that with some rooms that are connected by your verandas and so on. So it was an exercise on a transition space, a garden space, an office space, but all sort of blending one into the other. So the first topic came up too was brick has this impression of being very heavy. And we can use brick on walls, we can use bricks on floors, there's no worries. But we can't use bricks on roofs so easily. So brick, if it had to be made to feel lighter, how would we do something that would make the brick feel like it's floating over your space? Because there are many options of doing brick structures above your head, like domes and so on, but they all have a sense of feeling quite heavy. So we said, again, why don't we look at the jack arch system? So the jack arch system, again, is a shallow arch. I think it's a 1:6, 1:8 ratio is what they follow. Rise is to width or span. And we said if we have to go for this mortar-less shallow arch structure, these supporting downstand beam structures sort of take away from that beautiful soffit that you would get in case they were not there. So we said, what if we were to remove these and sort of push them up into the rise of the arch? So you start getting this really nice, smooth bottom where you could start seeing arch blending into another arch. So is there an opportunity to sort of create this kind of ribbed structure as your roof structure for this particular project? So again, I think like what they had mentioned during the Latticrete presentation, mock-up absolutely required. So we first did the security building, which we built first. We did these two arches on the security building, made a ton of mistakes, and then we said, we started off with a 21 brick arch. It was too shallow, it was a bit scary, but even in this, which is 23 bricks, what you see right here, if you were to pull the shuttering off, the whole thing will drop by about 20 millimeter. So you'd be so scared, you definitely don't want to be standing underneath. But the second they all make contact and lock into each other, they just won't move. So it's completely mortar free. All you have to do is brush some sand, cement on top and water the surface, and it completely stands all by itself. So what you're seeing over here is just maybe a few hours. This could have been morning, this could have been evening. So you just keep on sliding it through and just load the arch structure completely. So it's a very quick and mortar-free process. So that's the process of construction as it happened. So the thing was, because again this was also a COVID project and we also wanted to use the locally sourced brick. So all these bricks that you see are not one of those really high quality bricks that you see available for a hefty price. I mean, you have some good quality bricks here. All these bricks, we spent about 10 rupees, so that's about half a ringgit per brick as the cost of the brick. So it's really local brick. We just ensured that the corners were good and compressive strength was good. But what you're seeing over here is this relationship between indoor and outdoor. It changes with the season. There's not much of a transition between, indoor to veranda to the garden. And these arches, again, it's not very common to see arches cantilevering over your veranda space. So structurally it was designed in such a way that the secondary beams were designed to cantilever 2.5 meters beyond. And not only does it cantilever to cover the veranda, but it also protects all the glass from glare. So we have a glare-free interior. You can see from end to end. So as you can see in this picture, from this courtyard, through the office, through the other garden on the other side, there's constant connectivity. So there's no covering, there's no window shades, there's no blinds. So it's glare-free at any given point in time, that people don't have to actually protect or cover their space. So as a structural system, so what we have is, we have a column structure which was done in steel, we have our beam structure that was done in steel, and all the infill material in terms of floor, in terms of walls, and in terms of the roof slab structure was all done in local brickwork. But obviously the rooftop had to be flattened out, so to insulate the top roof structure where most of your heat gain actually happens, we have a lightweight filling material that was done over the roof structure with a base waterproofing, and then the roof was just tapered to the nearest water outlet so that we could dispose the rainwater. Air conditioning was planned inside the walls, so we have a storage system, kind of an air conditioning, which was done within the cavity walls. So cavity walls would have the refrigerant come in from below, and we'd have the air conditioning unit buried inside the wall cavity with just air conditioning slots on top. So that gives you an idea of what the rooftop structure was like. Very simple, and below that is what you see here. You can see the air conditioning over there. The units are all inside. So we obviously could not have conventional air conditioning. We didn't want to have ducts to spoil the space. So we ended up sort of going for this wall type air conditioning system so that it sort of frees up this whole space for enjoying the views of the landscape. Most of these offices work only morning 8 o'clock till about maybe 6:37 in the evening. So majority of the time naturally lit, naturally ventilated. So you can see a lot of the cacti that were there in the first photograph, they've all found a home here. There were some in the previous pictures as well. If you take a cross section, what you have is again this huge overhang. So that's the beam structure, that's the secondary beam structure, and that's the overhang that you have. So that cuts off all that incident sun. So if you open both ends up, so you have complete ventilation from end to end. So you don't have to really worry about any cross ventilation issues or any heat build-up issues inside your space. So even the cafeteria is designed the same way, where people come from the factory. We wanted people from the factory to leave the factory working space, come here, enjoy their space in the courtyard for their lunch break, even if it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Come here, spend some time, and then go back into the production area. So at night, I mean, we've also lit the scallop of the arch by uplighting as well as downlighting. So it gives you this sense of being in a very warm kind of a space at all points in time. So it really adds, the color of the brick really adds to the character of the overall space. So not only has brick obviously has been a highly insulating material, has reduced the load on mechanical cooling, but has fundamentally, we've understood that it has reduced a tremendous amount of concrete usage as a roof element in this project. Everybody would agree that concrete as a roof element is probably about 50 to 60% of concrete volume in any project. So by removing a good chunk of that roof slab concrete, we were able to reduce the amount of concrete and cement being used in this project by up to 70%. And that has resulted in an overall CO2 reduction of about 50 tons in this particular project. I'll show you a small video. So like you've seen in that video, I mean, we could have easily connected all the office spaces one inside the other and you could walk from inside. But we sort of encouraged, we had to obviously negotiate with the client to say, you need to leave your office space, your contained space, go out to the veranda, spend time with your landscape, connect across so that there's some amount of active interaction with that landscape area. It's not something to just look through a piece of glass. People really have to walk, they really have to use that space properly. So that's project number 2. Right, and now we're moving on to project number 3. So project number 3 is our own design studio. So I thought I'd change the typology to an office. Our own studio, obviously we're the clients, we're the architects, we're fighting with each other, but still it's actually very challenging. The opportunity to build our own studio came around the 25th year of our practice, and it's now 10 years, almost 10 years since we moved into this new facility. So we chose this land sort of in the waistline of the city. It's not like we had so much of a choice because we had a budget restriction on how much we could spend. So we were lucky enough to identify a piece of land which was quite close to this big junction. It had the suburban train network which was there. It also had the metro, the elevated train service, bus connectivity. So a part of the whole sustainability story is how do you get to work? How do your team get to work? So we promote people to use as much of public transport as possible. It's quite common here in countries that have very good public transport, but it's also something that's developing for us. Over the years, it's improving by leaps and bounds. But that is also part of the story of trying to see if we can be more sustainable in terms of how we get there, as well as how we use our space. So this is our street. This is you go to any street in Chennai, if any of you have ever visited before, you would see this is a pretty standard street in Chennai where you have a vibrant land use. So we have a hotel which is here, we have a house, we have a small, I don't know what to call it, a small food outlet, we have a pharmacy, we have a mechanic, we have everything. And we also have a site for an architectural office. So the land is about 25 meters long and 15 meters wide, and it's east facing. And what you see here at the entrance is a small temple. So it's quite common in the south of India where you see a road opposite a piece of land. It's considered it's considered like people would cast the evil eye. So they would always have a temple at the end of this road, the perpendicular road, so that nobody's evil eye will eat into your building. So it was there. So it's nothing we could do about it. It was 50 years old when we actually purchased this piece of land. So we have 4 trees. We have 2 mango trees there and there, and we have 2 neem trees. Unfortunately, this one died very recently. So keeping with the scale of the neighborhood, what we said is we'll accommodate the studio in 2 floors. We are close to the airport, so height is a restriction. The plot of land is very small. It's only about 4,000 odd square feet. So we said we have to accommodate it within 2 floors. So we said we'll split the 2 floors in the middle and give us distinctly 4 plates that we could use for our activity. And we said we'll use that central space, what's colored red and what's colored blue, as sort of an atrium space to sort of bring in as much natural light and air into that central space. Then we said, why don't we stagger? If you stagger the floors, there's an opportunity to sort of have good visual connectivity between the upper floors and the lower floors. So we said we'll stagger it by half a floor so that we have a little bit more of an interesting connect from floor to floor. And we also introduced a basement for a workshop, for model making, and we also said we can introduce maybe a cafeteria on top, which would be a place where everybody could go up and sort of have their meal and so on. In terms of physical connectivity, we said let's play around with different types of stairs. So currently we have a split spiral, we have a central dogleg staircase, as well as in the end we have a straight flight which takes us from the lower level all the way up to the cafeteria level. So the 4 floor plates that we have essentially house your design studios, your meeting spaces, your conference room, library, workshop, cafeteria, the rooftop, and so on. And that's what it is like on the inside. So it's visually well connected, naturally lit. You can sort of look at from end to end, it's always visually connected, so you don't feel like you're tucked away in a corner at any given point in time. Because of the various ways you can connect, people can cross over from above, from below, from there, from here. So it's almost like a little bit of like a comedy show. So you can climb in from here, you can climb out from there, you can walk around from here and walk around from there. So it just makes it more exciting, more intuitive for us, rather than having a very structured way of connection from space to space. So the central atrium, what you're seeing here, is the gap between the floor plates. So this is the floor plates that you see staggered. So this is 1.5 meters higher, 1.5 meters higher, and 1.5 meters lower. So thanks to this gap of about 1.65 meter, you have a much larger sense of space, because even though in plan it might seem like 1.65 meter, this diagonal dimension is so much more, and that's the perceived dimension of space. And it automatically makes it an extremely connected environment, allowing people to sort of interact, because we're all obviously very visual people and we like to talk to each other from end to end. So when the studio is working, we're all just talking to each other across the space, shouting at each other in a good way. And things like that. So it's more exciting. So again, the enclosure had to respond to the hot and humid climate. So that's something that we had to look at. So we said, how are we going to respond to it? So since the sun for us in our latitude is 13 degrees north. So the sun does move to the north for some portion of the year during the hottest months, but the sun is predominantly on the south for most of these months. So on the south side, we have a 2-layer kind of an enclosure, what you're seeing there. So this enclosure is essentially a painted masonry wall, which is the inner layer, which has got large glazed openings. But on the outside, we have a bamboo screen, which breaks the light and sort of fractures the light in such a way that we don't need to have a window covering on the inside. Again, on the eastern side, a very similar kind of arrangement of having an inner wall with glazing, and then on the outside we have a bamboo screen which also protects the cafeteria, at the same time protects and shades the arrival space of this building. So just to give you an idea of the section, this gives you an idea of where the staggered floor plates are, the cafeteria, the arrival space, the bamboo screen. Similarly, on the south side, you get to see the screen with the studio space just beside it. So how is this space actually sort of manifest? So we have an overhang, and the light that comes through comes completely fractured, completely filtered. And what we did was we sourced a lot of bamboo pieces, treated bamboo from a supplier. So it gives us privacy from our neighbors, because each of these bamboos, however you want to place them, they turn left, turn right, break, look down, look left. So it's impossible to actually look right through the bamboo. And since it gives you privacy, at the same time it allows the breeze to blow through, allowing the space to stay cool and ventilated. But what we also found out was a lot of the dirt and the dust, sort of like a conversation we were having outside when I had come in, a lot of the dust settles in the actual circumference, the inner circumference of the bamboo. So it almost settles there, and I don't know how that happens. It's something to do with physics, where as the breeze passes through, probably the particles are just too heavy. They just settle down in that crevice, and the sort of dust-free air seems to come inside. So we just have to hose this down once in a month to just take care of it. But I don't have the issue of maintaining a dusty interior. So that suddenly seemed to be an added advantage of this particular idea. So that's how the space is. This is the straight flight that takes you from the studio, the upper studio level, all the way up to the cafeteria. Again, the same space you can see where you arrive. That's the bamboo curtain on top. So when it's morning time, the sun would probably come and hit you till about midway, but beyond that, there's no more sun on the inside. So again, no need for window covering, no need for shades, no need for protection. As long as you sort of manipulate and understand where the sun is, at what point in time it is, it's reasonably comfortable to sort of operate within this space. So let's move on to the other side. So on the western side, we have obviously the hottest sun, and we didn't have the luxury of a lot of space. But on the western side, what we did was plant a creeper, a kind of a local creeper plant on the wall. And on the northern side, which is this face, is where we used a local jasmine creeper to start creating what we would call maybe a bio-strategy. We didn't have the margin, we didn't have the space to project, we didn't have the space to create a physical barrier. So we said, what if we start using landscaping as maybe a defender to protect us from the hot sun. Because when the sun is strong, obviously the landscape grows dense, so there's an opportunity to sort of use landscape as the protection that we need for these two phases. So that's what you have in section. So you have the compound wall. We created this kind of a structure over it, have the creeper over that, and on the western side, that's where we have a passion flower creeper. So the creeper just got a mesh on the wall and let the creeper grow all the way through. So that's where the studio is. The rest of the western wall is obviously protected by this huge mango tree. So we didn't need to protect it across the whole width. So we had one half protected by the mango tree, the other half protected by the passion flower creeper. So that shows you the sense of space that you have in the backyard. So on the morning half, we have our tea and snacks on this backyard because the sun's on the east. And in the evening, when the sun's on the west, this is too hot, so we'll run up to the cafeteria and have our tea there. So again, it opens a question saying, do you need fixed spaces for fixed activities, or can you move your activity based on the weather, based on the season, based on where the sun is? So you can improve your comfort rather than having fixed activities in fixed spaces. So this is the jasmine creeper area. So again, all the glazed areas are completely shaded. You can see how bright and hot it already looks at that end, but having the canopy above your head is something that is quite common. It's been done thousands of times before, but that's what we had done here. Thanks to jasmine, the aroma is also very nice, so this whole veranda smells very aromatic at all points in time. So you get a sense of the space from inside. And finally we come to the roof. So like any building, the roof probably contributes to 60 to 65% of all the heat gain would come in from the roof. And that's an awful lot of heat. So we designed this roof slab as a polyfill roof slab. So like you see in this section, it's a double slab structure. So we have a 100 millimeter slab structure in the bottom. We have a 100 millimeter slab structure on top. The overall slab thickness is 450 millimeters with 250 millimeters worth of high density expanded polystyrene as a sandwich. So since we don't have any columns or beams similar to this structure that you have here, we don't have any beams crisscrossing the space. The ribbed beam structures are actually within that 450 millimeter. So it's completely sandwiched. So you see a complete flat bottom slab at the bottom, and at the same time you have a flat top and you have this expanded polystyrene insulation in between. So gives you a sense of space. The one more thing that we also introduced was to bring in some light into the middle of our work area. So this sketch over here shows you the bottom slab, the top slab, insulation, the rib beams in between, and we have these trapezoidal light scoops, or I don't know what to call them, light pyramids that sort of bring in natural light. So as you know, it is extremely hot, extremely bright. So the apertures on top are very small. So this is only about 400 millimeters, but it expands to almost 1.5 meters in the bottom. So you're letting that punch of light, that bright source, sort of just fade off. And you have this nice soft light that filters down into that space. The metal that was used for this trapezoidal light structure is actually welded to the reinforcement and is made out of 12 millimeter thick metal sheets. So all the rebar that got cut in the slab, all the rebar that got cut in the top slab is all welded back onto this metal framework so that the whole structure does not lose its stiffness, so that the maintenance of that stiffness is continuous from end to end. This is the rooftop cafeteria. It's got an inclined roof that also acts as a wind scoop, so the breeze can sort of capture from here and blow down all the way into the lower levels. And if you put it all together to complete our rooftop, we have almost about 9 kilowatt of solar power, and we also do urban agriculture. So we grow about 15 varieties of local vegetable on our roof, and we have the maintenance of all this being done by our own team. So we have a gardener to help us out, but everybody outside of architecture, drawing, engineering, etc., everyone has an alternate job at the office also. So they all participate in different activities. Maybe it is seeing how things are maintained, or maintaining your product catalog, or maintaining the garden, checking solar. So we all take turns to make sure we are all responsible for what we have. And that's how it is when you put it back onto the street. The building sort of becomes integral to the overall street chaos, and funny enough, it seems to work quite well. So if you see a cross section, we are naturally lit throughout the day, and probably only on overcast days we need to turn on some lights. And shading our building and letting the breeze through has sort of kept us quite efficient in terms of the amount of energy we use. So we don't use a lot of air conditioning. We probably use about 5 to 6 months of air conditioning in a year, and the rest of the time the space is fairly insulated and stays quite cool. So this photograph essentially shows you the street. So you can see the hotel, the house, this, and the shop making some tasty fried food. The reason by showing you this is the building edge or the compound wall. We sort of wanted to commemorate the street diversity that we had. We have all this architecture going on. We have all these different typologies going on. So we said, what if we compose a compound wall that has sketches of different types of buildings, different architecture, and sort of come together with that temple. And it sort of gives you a kind of a sensation as you walk by that, there is a lot of diversity in the street that we are walking past. So that was why we had envisaged a whole series of sketches, hand-drawn sketches, on that compound wall. So this is the lily pond where you arrive as you move in. Then you have the bamboo never looks the same ever. Every day something seems to pop out, something seems to fall off, something seems to twist. But I think seeing it grow, change is quite exciting. The flooring was done with a local limestone. So we had not polished the stone, so the stone is unpolished. So you bring the stone, all of them look grey. The second you polish them, you start finding out one's beige, one's green, and one's brown. So we had no idea, so this is a complete guesswork mosaic. But it seems to be okay though. It's not so bad. And the texture of the timber shuttered concrete. So essentially we're trying to bring in as many natural textures as possible. So there's nothing that can be removed from this particular building if you look at it. There's no false ceiling, there are no blinds, there are no curtains, there's nothing that does not have a long life. So everything that's hardy, honest in terms of material, steel is steel, stone is stone, concrete is concrete, and the space is what it is. So just to give you an idea, from one place you can see people working on the model below, you can see people sitting on top, you get to sit right up on top and look at all the spaces below. It's quite dynamic, and as people have discussions in different corners, there's an opportunity to have debate, discussion, but all of it within this large singular volume that you have. I have a short video again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Architect Siddarth, for that insightful presentation. Now we will have Q&A session. For those who have questions, you may scan on the screen and post your question in the Slido. In the meantime, we have give the speaker 2 minutes water break. I would like to invite again our speaker to the on stage with Architect Rain Tan to moderate the Q&A session with me. You can sit at the center.
Yeah.
Alright, now we are moving on to the Q&A and also moderating section. If you guys got any question, feel free to scan the Slido and type in your question. Thanks Architect Siddarth for sharing. It's a wonderful project in India. I personally visited 2 of his projects when I visited Chennai, and that's how I bring him in, because I get so inspired, especially when I visit his office. It's so difficult for Malaysian architect to build the office and with all this natural design, passive design that you have in your mind. We have a few questions from the floor regarding your project. I think a lot of people would really want to know all your details, particularly on the construction technology that you have. Maybe you can share with us a little bit, how do you come in mind to have bamboo for your facade on the office itself?
So during the design phase, so I'll put things into context. The previous place that we were staying was where we had our office was a multi-tenanted facility. So we had 1 floor for us, we had a lower floor for us as well, and we had other tenants also living the same, like a commercial complex. So we had 2 floors and there were 4 or 5 other floors for the others. So to buy this land, we had to sell that. So the new person who has bought the land, who bought the office, he wanted to move in. So we had to sort of think all of this on the fly, and the honest truth is whatever was the first thought that came to mind is what we did. Because we had 10 months between when we left that office to build this office and move in. So in retrospect, if I were to say why bamboo, was I think when you look at a natural material, I think the whole story of imperfection that I spoke about, I think nature, no one piece of bamboo is ever going to look the same. And I think that beauty of having a material that is not identical, cannot be found as the same size, the same diameter, the same color, sort of appeal to us as a thinking. And it is a natural material, can be recycled. So in many ways, it sort of came in our thinking saying, why not use a natural material? The things that crossed our mind also were, how do you maintain, how do you make sure that insects don't eat it up? So those are all things that came across our mind, but so far we've been managing for nearly 10 years with the bamboo facade, and it seems okay.
So what is your, I would say, the main reason or the goal that make you make this decision to build your own office?
Right. The very good question. The apartment that we were in, the commercial complex that we were in, we are talking about natural light, we're talking about natural ventilation, we're talking about so many things. But if somebody walked into our office, our previous office, they'd see only 4 windows in the whole office floor, because we were sharing a wall with a neighboring office, we have a staircase on one side, and where is the natural light and ventilation? Where is all this that you guys are talking about? So we really felt that even though that was a very comfortable office, we were doing very well, we were not able to sort of, walk the talk. We were not able to demonstrate that, this is what the space could feel like, because not everybody's got the same level of imagination. So we really felt, for our 25th year, we need to buy our own piece of land and build ourselves, not buy again in a developer property, sort of build our own building and demonstrate what we can do with passive ventilation, passive usage of space, talk about natural light, and demonstrate. So that was something that was something that we felt we should do for ourselves. So it was a very self-driven desire to want to build our own office.
I think it was a very interesting integrating of natural elements, like having the transparency into some of the species, so you will not rely on the artificial energy like lamps, so you will be more on natural elements. Regarding the bamboo facade material, I just wonder in terms of how do you foresee in future maintenance? Like you said, some part of it is falling off. How do you see it maybe in the next future? Will it be replaced, or how do you maintain? I mean, how do you plan it at this stage on the maintenance on this material?
From the looks of it, so far with the way it has aged in the past 9 to 10 years, I would say probably looks like within a 15 or 18 year period, it might have to go for a complete replacement. But what I feel good about it is whatever that falls off or whatever is to be removed or replaced tomorrow is completely biodegradable, and we can still go back and and bamboo obviously is a grass. It can be quickly grown, can be treated, and can be used once again. So it is a maintenance hassle. I mean, we do have to wash it, we do have to maintain it, we do have to clean it, we do have to apply a special cashew shell oil coating on the bamboo. So those are all some of the challenges in terms of recurring maintenance, which maybe a man-made facade system won't have. But that's something that we have sort of understood, and we have agreed, and we have gone ahead with it.
Okay, now going on to the second project on the brick material selection that you use in the project. How do you able to convince your client in terms of like replacing the material from the earlier, like you shown as a stone into a brick, and then how you're able to convince the client in terms of changing the detailings of the beam and convince that the brick can be borne through cement mortar, and with all the experimenting, I mean, you have done through that, the experimental.
The honest truth is we never told them any of this. So no convincing. So they saw it when they saw it on site. See, some clients are very involved, and obviously if they're very involved, they want to see a lot of the detailing and so on. And funny enough, the client's sister was an architect, and she didn't seem very interested in seeing it. So we said, okay. But like I told you, we did one mock-up, and that mock-up was the security room. So when they saw the security room mock-up, they were quite confident that this would work. And we needed to convince ourselves that this would work, because the system works, but will it work with that local brick? Will it work with the contractor's skill set? So in all our projects, what we try and do is we try and do a mock-up on the security building or some kind of a structure that I don't have to demolish tomorrow, because sometimes mock-ups are expensive and then you'll have to trash it. And again, we are cost sensitive, very cost sensitive in India. So if we try and do it on structures that are going to be there, like a pump house, or maybe a security building or an electrical room, which is otherwise designed as just an ordinary building. So you do all the trialing there, and then you use that as your learning to bring it to the main building. So that's how we sort of went through.
I think the material experimenters is significantly influenced the outcome design. I think it's a risk worth taking for you. I mean, the outcome look is very brilliance. I mean, I like the overall outcome.
So we were talking about the vaulted roof and things like that. We actually see from your aerial view on the video and photo, a lot of us is actually asking question like, when you do the vaulted roof and then you do a RC roof on top, how does the drainage work? I actually see some of it. You actually design some spatial outlet that where the water can flow into the garden, right?
Yeah.
So can you just explain a little bit? Maybe also because of your weather and your season, right?
Correct. So unlike Malaysia, we don't have rains every day or every week. So for us, our rains come only during the monsoon season. So that starts, say, October all the way down to December. But the whole year's worth of rain, almost a meter and a half worth of rain, happens in 3 months. So it's quite bad. It's quite torrential. It causes floods in the city and so on. So we need to push the rainwater as fast as possible off the roof to make sure that there's no logging of water on the roof structure. So what we did was, when the bricks were being laid, a lot of bricks, because they were low quality bricks or locally fired bricks, we'd have a lot of broken pieces of brick, a lot of bricks that didn't make the standard to get into the actual arch structure. So all the broken bricks, along with air agitated concrete, that is like a binding material. It's a low density concrete. So they add an admixture in the concrete in a very, 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 very low, it's called M5 concrete instead of your M20 and 30 and so on. So M5 concrete mixed with an air agitation, and your broken bricks was used as the filler material between the arch and the top of the beam. And that's what gives you your taper and your slope.
From the project that you have shared, all 3 projects are mostly single building, low dense buildings. So just wonder, do you take commissions of a commercial project like high-rise apartment or any residential project in your office? Do you take any of that?
We do. In fact, at the moment we're doing a 22-story structure. We've done multiple towered structures before. So yes, we do.
Is there any architectural language or material you intend to challenge in the near future? Since most of the project, even the first one, your experience of facade with bamboo and then on the concrete. Then the second one is on the vaulted roof. The third one is on the bamboo. So any spatial material that you are looking into, explore or even do some challenge for your future project?
At one point in time, recently, maybe about 6 months ago, we were looking at stone in similar light. The video that I showed you for the metallic bellows project, where stone was used even as a roof structure. So is there an opportunity to sort of blend stone and steel? And is there an opportunity to sort of integrate the two to create a slightly more modern paradigm or more contemporary paradigm to stone and steel in architecture, but stone as a structural material, not stone as a cladding material? So that's something we're studying at the moment.
Through your visit, your travel in Malaysia, do you find any building that you find inspired, or anything that similar architectural language in India that you maybe inspired you to bring back into India and explore?
Well, I can't spot one building. This is a nice building we're in, but Chinatown was something that was amazing this morning. I think what I really like about space is the multi-use of space. You'll see that as a recurring theme for us as well, in terms of one space never gets used for one activity. And I think in Asian context, density is high, space is limited. We need to use the same space for multiple uses. So I like the fact that in Chinatown you have a shop behind, you have a walkway in front, and you have a hawker selling something in front, and you have a person selling some food. There's so many layers to get to the shop, which in the conventional shopping, the malls and the high street shopping, it lacks the character. And I think that is the character that if we can structure and we can bring a little bit more, what do you call it, I don't want to use standardization, a bit more character to it, then it's an opportunity for contemporary work to also reflect this nature that you have in places like Chinatown.
Okay, thanks. I hope Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur inspired you and we can see more of your project in future. We have a last question from Visha. Do you look at history and culture when you are taking new project, and whether you use any of them in your research, and how does it have influence on your design? I think some of the story you shared just now, you do have some of it. So in future or even in your current company philosophy or design process, do you look into all these things?
I think it's very specific to the project you're working on. Now, various projects that demand a need to do some amount of research, to do a case study, definitely is something that we would like to do. And I think constantly revisiting history, revisiting the past, looking at architecture from before, has a lot of answers to give you for how you look at architecture today. Because a lot of these thought processes have actually been done before. So what I'm talking about is the thought process only. We don't have to translate what a traditional building looks like and sort of recreate the traditional building. That's copying, and that's definitely not what we want to do. So how do you take the fundamentals or the essence of what architecture was able to bring, say 100, 200, 300 years ago, and how can you sort of try and recreate that essence, that purity, or the inner core? So that's really what we're looking at. Like, what I like most about Metallic Bellows as a project is that space stands first, material stands second, because the sense of space is what captures you first, and everything else follows as second, which is something that you see in a lot of the older structures where you go to a religious place or you go to a place of study. The space gathers number one spot, and then everything else sort of follows after that.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Architect Siddarth. Now I would like to invite again Architect Siddarth Mani and Mr. LEW WAI FONG to the stage to take token of appreciation from the organization PAM.